Hello. So this video is going to start a short introduction into sec theta, cosec theta and cot theta. Up to now, you've been doing trig very happily and you've been using sine. I want you to think about the graph for that. Cos, another graph, and tan theta. So these three functions are linked. If you remember, if we go right back to year 11, sine, cos and tan, it's all to do with the ratio between the sides, and that's where these functions came from. And sine is to do with the ratio of opposite to hypotenuse and cos adjacent to hypotenuse and so on. So that's where they came from, and we've happily used them. And today we're going to realise that we're going to have these other three new terms, which are sec, cosec and cot. But to understand why and where they come from, I need to go back a bit. So I want us to think about our notation. Sine x multiplied by sine x. How do we write that? Well, we could write it like this, couldn't we? I don't know about you, but writing those brackets all the time would be a problem. We can't write this. This would not work. I'm going to write it up here. We can't write this. The reason we can't write that is because that's the sine of x squared. So no, that's not happening. Can't do that. So what we've actually ended up using is the sine squared x, and you've happily used that. And the reason, which you would have explained at the time, is that that's the sine of the angle squared, where this here represents sine x multiplied by sine x. Great, brilliant. So then let's think about the following. So if I had that the sine of x equals 45 degrees, yes, I am working in degrees, could be in radians. What would that be in radians? 45 degrees? Hopefully you've said pi over 4. Now, I want to, coming back to the question here, I want to find out what x is. And there's a couple of ways we can do this. You may have seen in the books, not something we'd have used at GCSE, though it does come up in other textbooks, as arc sine 45, or more likely, because of what's written on your calculators, we'd actually write sine to the -1 of 45. And if you notice, the notation used here links with this notation here, doesn't it? But this sine to the -1 is not the inverse of it. What it's saying is you want the inverse function, not the reciprocal. Yes, so you want the undoing. So for example, when I add something, the opposite to adding is subtracting. So when I do the sine of an angle, the opposite, the inverse function, the undoing function, is sine to the -1 of 45. So now I'm going to ask you, knowing all that, how would I write this then? So if I've written 1 over sine x, if this here is how we write powers, however, when we're going backwards, we're doing the opposite. We've chosen to use this. How do I write that? Because I can't use this. This is different. This is undoing this. So how do I write this? 1 over sine. And this is where cosec, sec and cot come from. So because we've used up sine to the -1, 1 over sine x we write as cosec x. And that's all it means. 1 over sine x is cosec x, because sine to the -1 of x, or not of x, or of a value, That's the idea of doing the opposite, going back. So if you add, it's the opposite is subtract. So for the reciprocal, of sine x, 1 over sine x, we have to write that differently. And so we write it as cosec x. And there are 3 of these because obviously we have 1 over sine x, 1 over cos x, and 1 over tan x. And 1 over sine x is cosec x, 1 over cos x is sec x, 1 over tan x is cot x. And those you need to learn and understand. And they are not in your formula books. There's lots of the work that we're going to use these with that is not in your formula books. So make sure you have a way of remembering them. Different people remember them different ways. Personally, I say, well, this is sine. So 1 over sine begins with a C. It doesn't begin with the S, as you'd imagine. It's kind of the reverse, if you look. And then this is the only one with T in it. So that's how I know that one's tan. I don't need to remember them like that anymore, but when I started out, it was my way. You need to come away with a way of learning these because they're so important. So write them down now in your books and go away and make sure you learn them.